Joined once again by Jamie Bourne from the Punch Perfect Boxing channel that you can find on YouTube. Jamie, thanks for being with us. Let's start with Fury Wilder because that's kind of the buzz for the general boxing fans, even though it's been a little while since that bout ended. What was the response like in the UK?
I think UK fight fans and sports fans as well are very happy. Tyson Fury is well received over here. He's very, you could see him in a pub, you could see him in a restaurant. He's a sociable guy, so he reflects well with sports fans over here. And he is the leading heavyweight in the world at the minute, so it's good for British, public and fight fans to have the leading heavyweight.
Where did that trilogy really rank for you among the greatest in the history of the sport?
It was an all-time great trilogy. In terms of fights as well, the heavyweight division has been a bit of a sleeper really in this century by sort of all accounts really. In the 90s, we had a lot of great fights with Holyfield, Tyson, Lewis, but then it went a little bit stale under the Klitschko era, but this sort of really revived it, and I think it will kick on now because there's some really good fights, but in terms of trilogies, it's definitely right up there.
You mentioned Fury's personality. I think for the casual boxing fan, we like the theatrics of this and kind of what he brings. He does have an approachable quality to him. I mean, when you have a trilogy like this that delivers in the ring, but also features two really compelling characters with compelling stories, what does that do overall for the sport?
I think it makes it more inviting when you see someone like Tyson Fury. I think the difference is with an Anthony Joshua, so to speak, is he's seen a bit more of a business. He's seen more as, a marketing tool, whereas Tyson Fury's seen more like one of us. He seems more like a personality. So I think that makes young people feel like they can get into the sport, and especially with heavyweights, because there's such a unique thing about them. They're such big men. It's just a way to get people involved in the sport. So I think it will do wonders.
Yeah, I love how honest he's been and how approachable he feels. I guess the question for boxing fans now, like it often is, what's next for him?
Yeah, so he's got a mandatory challenger, which is Dillian Whyte, who's a fellow British heavyweight. He's kind of been working his way up the rankings, and he's been due a title shot for quite a while now. But because of the Wilder trilogy and all the legal proceedings and stuff, he's had to wait for this opportunity. But now, if he gets past his opponent at the end of October, it looks like that fight will be ordered for early next year. So we should see an all British heavyweight title fight next year.
Do you expect that to be, if it does happen, competitive between the two?
Not particularly, to be honest. I think Tyson Fury has put himself in a bit of a league of his own at the minute. I think only really that kind of bracket of Wilder, Joshua and Usyk are really sort of in their own category. I think Dillian Whyte's always game. That's the one thing you're going to get with him as he comes forward. He likes to swing the big overhand shots, and he won't go down lightly. He won't let the fight pass him by. He'll be competitive, but I think Tyson Fury's just too good at the minute.
And Anthony Joshua and Usyk are set to fight again. Do you expect that to happen?
Yeah, I don't think there's much kind of alternative, really. They had it in the contract before they went into the first fight. Rematch clauses are becoming more of a thing, and if you try and sidestep it, you'll just meet a lot of legal trouble. But I don't think Usyk will shy away from it. He's known for fighting in his opponent's backyards and taking on all comers, so I think he would have known that he'll win this fight, and he'll have to do it again to, cement his dominance on the division.
Based on what you saw the last time those two met, do you expect him to win again? I mean, I imagine that there's very little downside for Anthony Joshua at this point to have another opportunity to prove himself. He's had a couple chances so far.
Yeah, I do think Alexander Usyk will repeat his victory. There was a lot of glaring flaws in the first fight that I think in a 6 to 7 month period you can't really correct. It takes years of experience, and Usyk has so much more experience over Joshua that I just think he's a step ahead at the minute. And in the short time frame from the first fight to the second fight, I don't think he'll be able to turn it around, which is a bit of a worry for Joshua because he comes with a lot of baggage. He's a big commercial star and he'll want to be on a winning run, but we'll see what happens after they meet in spring next year.
How do you expect Anthony Joshua to respond? Where do you think he is right now mentally after talking a big game and having a couple of very public losses?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for Anthony Joshua as well because he's so in the public eye, and you can tell just by watching his interviews and, when he does his documentaries and stuff like that, you can see he's very methodical. He thinks a lot, and he does everything thinking about what the consequence is. So I imagine for him, this is a real tough loss. He struggles to sort of dust himself down and get going again. And we saw the last time he took a defeat, they took the fight over to Saudi Arabia for the rematch. A lot of people said about the financial gain from that. I actually think it alleviated a bit of the home pressure that is usually on Joshua when he fights in the UK. So I think it's going to be tough for him, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles the rematch.
Okay, and just one big picture thing I wanted to ask you about. I here stateside, the boxing commission in the state of Colorado has made a vote to adopt open scoring for boxing for the sake of a little bit more transparency, so that fans and everybody else can kind of follow along real time. What's your feedback on that?
Yeah, so I actually had a few conversations with a few different people to get their insights on this as well. And there's definitely mixed reviews on this. Obviously, it's just the Colorado state at the minute, so that doesn't reflect the rest of America or here in the UK. But I think there's mixed reviews because it can sort of lead a fight if the fighter knows what's happening, and it may change if a fighter's well ahead on the cards. He may just start to cruise the rest of the fight, and it may sort of impact how they approach it. And I think also if you know round by round what's happening on the scorecards, when you get to the end of the fight, there won't be that element of surprise. There won't be that kind of anxious wait for fight fans. So you lose a bit of the entertainment factor. But ultimately, people are complaining about bad scoring and bad officiating. So there does need to be some form of transparency, whether that's open scoring or whether that be, post-fight interviews with judges. Maybe they, come out with press releases to explain why they scored it a certain way. I think that's the transparency we're looking for, not necessarily the open scoring that might take away from the actual fights themselves.
Yeah, that's great insight there, because I didn't think about that in terms of just strategy from a boxer's standpoint. I mean, has that been, do you think, part of the reason why the scoring has been kept from everybody in the past, is that you want each round to matter, and you want the boxers to kind of proceed without really knowing who has the advantage, unless it's obviously a bout that is very clear cut. But for some of those tighter ones, I imagine that adds to the intrigue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also impacts the judges potentially. If they read out the scorecards and the fans get a sense that the judges are getting it wrong, if they start booing and there's a bit of an atmosphere in the arena or the stadium or wherever, that may then impact the judges that go completely the other way. So I think it just for professionalism, it might impact that. We actually saw a fight a few years ago. The WBC used to do open scoring, and they did it for one of Canelo Alvarez's fights. And he was up on the scorecards. And during the end of the fight, the last couple of rounds, he sort of took his foot off the gas a little bit, and it was a lot closer than it needed to be. Perhaps if he'd have been, not known those scorecards, he might have continued his pace throughout, and we might have got more of a dominant performance and less controversy. So it can impact the result of a fight.
That's interesting. But so far, I haven't heard anything over in the UK about adopting some sort of, mass mandate that would release open scoring. We're still probably far away from that.
Yeah, I think they look at the logistics side of it, but I don't think at the minute we're anything close to that. The more conversation is around speaking to referees and judges after fights to get their explanations. But again, that's kind of being left to a spokesperson from each of these committees and stuff. So hopefully we get more transparency as fight fans.
All right. And just lastly for you, Jamie, appreciate the time as always. I know that this is maybe a little bit of a lull these last couple of weeks, coming off such a big heavyweight trilogy coming to its conclusion. But what can boxing fans look forward to as we head further down the calendar, maybe in the month of November?
Yeah, November is a stacked schedule for fight fans. I feel like I'm a salesman right now, but you've got Canelo Alvarez, who's considered the pound for pound number one in the world. He's taking on Caleb Plant, which is for the right to become undisputed, which means that Canelo hasn't held all four belts in the division before, so that's a big opportunity. And then moving later into the month, we see Terence Crawford, who's one of the best fighters in America. If you're an American, you should be really excited about Terence Crawford because he's one of your best sportsmen, and he's taken on Sean Porter, who's been involved in a lot of big fights, and he's very athletic, very physical. He likes to bring it, and it's going to be the toughest fight of Terence Crawford's career, so that's the other one you should check out.
All right, fantastic. We look forward to circling back with you after those and getting your thoughts. Jamie, Punch Perfect, find it on YouTube. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much.